Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So finally we are here at the last game of the official first 12 rounds of the World Chess Championship match of 2010 between Veselin Topalov and Viswanathan. Anand, we are here at the last game finally. So after some time of actually me covering this championship, we have come to the end. And this game here we have Topalov now with the white pieces playing against Anand with the black pieces. Up until now, the score is 5.5 towards 5.5. So a lot of stakes are lying on this game, but of course neither of the players they don't have to rush it, because in the end, if they draw the game, the championship will move on to the tie breaks. But okay, still it is a very interesting game, so let's just jump right into it. Here Topalov is with the white pieces, and not like Viswanathan Anand in the last game where he decided to mix it up and played c4 as the first move. Topalov stays true to his most deadly weapon, d4 as the first move. So he plays it, we see d5, not knight to f6 this time, and after a couple of moves we see a queen's gambit declined on the board. After knight to c3, we see bishop to e7, so not going bishop to b4, so a much more steady line, and now bishop to g5. h6 was played, bishop to h4, and now castle. So pretty standard stuff at the beginning of the game. e3, and now knight to e4. And this move was pretty much a very interesting move to me, because for those of you who have been subscribed for some time on this channel, you have seen me covering some Capablanca games where he also employed this Lasker's defense. So from time when Lasker and Capablanca have played, it has been 100 years. So in 2010 in World Chess Championship match, this opening is still being played. So this is something that is very nice to see. Of course, the theory has advanced since then, but still a very nice thing to see. And of course, I want to mention a couple of things in this opening, and I also want to think about how it's actually great to think about this World Chess Championship matches between very strong players while there is an incoming World Chess Championship match. It's just in a couple of weeks in November between Fabiano Caruana and Magnus Carlsen. Definitely put your thoughts on that in the comments down below. But okay, bishop to e7, let's get back to the game. Queen to e7, and here I just want to say that knight to e4 isn't the preferred line in this opening, because after pawn captures and the knight moves, f5 is definitely a move you would like to play with black pieces, now having a very strong center. And the idea is that while white does have to think about does he want to go queenside castle because c4 is already played, going kingside castle could also be potentially dangerous, because f4 is just one move ahead. Opening up the f-file, the rook is already there, and there is no problem in going knight to d7, knight to f6 here, b6, bishop to b7. Black has definitely a clear plan how to play this game. So most of the players don't go for this, and Topalov didn't go for it as well. So he played rook to c1 defending the knight. We saw c6, and now bishop to e2. Knight captures, rook captures, pawn captures on c4, and bishop captures on c4. Everything in order here. Now we saw knight to d7, continuing with the development, and castles. b6, preparing bishop to b7 and c5, and now bishop to d3, putting a bishop on a better square on this very nice diagonal, and also at the same time attacking the pawn. This is how you should develop. c5, attacking and developing, so a very nice idea by Anand as well. And we see bishop to e4 attacking the rook on a8. Rook to b8 needs to be played, and now queen to c2, putting even more pressure here on the pawn on c5. Knight to f6, pawn captures on c5, knight captures on e4, queen on e4, pawn captures on c5, and queen to c2. So after a couple of exchanges, we see a position on the board where Topalov decided to keep the knight, Anand decided to keep the bishop, while on the other hand, this pawn is a little bit of a problematic thing in the position, because it is an isolated pawn. Black has 3 pawn islands, white has 2 pawn islands, and you could argue that Black is in a little bit of a worse position, but still he has this bishop, which will not now be played on b7, and having a bishop on this diagonal is a definite advantage. So the position is kind of equal, but both of the sides have something to play for. Now in this position, I wouldn't advise you to go for this pawn because, yeah, the bishop can simply capture on f3, pawn captures on f3, and black can even win back material by playing rook to b2. Now when queen captures, the queen captures on c5, the material is equal, but having this kind of a disadvantage for white is a definite no-no, I would say. So don't go for this. Black is definitely a better side here for the endgame. And of course, as mentioned, after bishop to b7, Topalov simply defended the knight, playing knight to d2, and we saw rook to d8. f3, and a very nice positional move, something to learn from, even though you're putting your pawns here on light squares, but you're limiting the dominance of the light square bishop, because having this bishop here on this very strong diagonal is a very big advantage for black. So here white plays f3, a very nice move in my opinion. We have bishop to a6 attacking the rook, and now once again an interesting decision by Topalov, playing rook to f2. So not keeping it on the first rank, but rather playing it here on f2. And you will see the next couple of moves will solidify the position of the king. Rook to d7, preparing to double up, and g3. The other rook comes here, and king to g2. No pieces on the first rank, king needs to go to g2. Bishop to d3, queen to c1, and bishop to a6. So both of the players are a little bit testing out the other player in order to see what to play next. Here, attacking the queen and putting the bishop back, you can see that Anand isn't in no hurry, to actually go and to play for something courageous, because he knows that his chances lay with the white pieces more than with the black pieces. On the other hand, Topalov would maybe like to try something with the white pieces, but still he is playing a stable game for now. Rook to a3 attacking the bishop, and bishop to b7. Now, once again, the bishop is on this strong diagonal, and keep in mind that rook to a7 is definitely not possible because of bishop to f3, which comes with check. Knight to f3 and rook to a7, black has won an exchange here, and he is definitely winning this game. So, here after bishop to b7, we saw knight to b3, attacking the pawn on c5, and rook to c7 defends it. Knight to a5 attacking the bishop, bishop to a8, and knight to c4, remaneuvering the knight on a better square. e5, not allowing the knight to jump to e5, and now we see e4, not allowing e4 itself. Because if black would have pushed e4, then there would be some serious weaknesses on light squares here. So, and having the light square bishop, yeah, it would be a definite advantage for black. f5. Why not challenge the center immediately? Having the bishop on this very strong diagonal, moves such as f5 is definitely must. And now it's up to white to decide what to actually do. Here he could have Topalov could have just played knight to d2, simply defend the pawn on e4, and after a couple of exchanges, both of the players could have entered a drawish endgame where they have both queens on the board and even both of the rooks. So neither of the players do have some serious advantage. There is nothing you can play for here. I mean, both of those players can play for something, but there is nothing decisive to go for here. So it would be a dead draw, and probably here, because of that, Topalov decided to not go for this. He decided to surprise everybody and capture on f5. Anand played e4 here in order to open up the position, and that is exactly what happened. Pawn captures on e4. I should argue that capturing a pawn here and opening up the position wasn't the best idea for Topalov. He could have played something like rook to e3, but then after pawn captures, king to g1, this pawn is kind of a pest here. Back rank threats and everything. Yeah, after queen to g5. Yeah, it does seem like black can actually play for something here, so probably because of that, after capturing on f5, Topalov didn't want to go for this, so in the end he captured here on e4. But now queen comes on e4, and once again, to surprise of everybody, in order to get some advantage and go into a very sharp position, he played king to h3. And you can see that clearly in this game he is going to play for a win, because playing such a move in this high stakes game, Yeah, it's a very difficult one. But the interesting thing is that this is a very complex and a very sharp position where Anand is the one who actually has to play very precise moves if he wants to keep the advantage. Of course, on the other hand, white needs to play precise moves as well, because playing the king on h3 and this position is quite open, it is very dangerous to have him here. But let's explore the position for a little bit. Here, if you would play something like, I don't know, rook to f8 to attack the pawn, then simply rook to e3 is coming attacking the queen. If the queen moves out of the way, then knight to e5, with knight to g6 in the preparation, and all of a sudden white is the one who is on the attack. The king is relatively safe, g4 can be played to support the f5 pawn, and things are looking good. White does have that one pawn as a material advantage, and the king seems to be kind of safe for the moment. So if you play something like queen to d4, then rook to f4 is coming. Queen has to move once again, and rook to e6 is coming. You see, these two rooks are working very well together, and still there is a pawn advantage here. The knight will come on e5 to g6, the queen can enter the game. Once again, it is a very nice position for white. So playing the rook here isn't the best of ideas. The other idea is, instead of playing the rook, is queen to e8. Trying to play queen to h5, give a checkmate. So g4 is the only move, but once again, it isn't giving black anything decisive. Of course, the white king is wide open, but now he can go on g3. You would have to play something like h5, but keeping in mind that these moves also open up the black king. So in this position, when king to h3 was played, Anand needed to find the best move. So in manners of the world champions, he did find it, and he played rook to d4. And now this is something completely different, because queen to g4 is a threat of checkmate. And this is something you should learn from, because giving checkmate threats and giving check threats in such an active and sharp position is always a good thing. I mean, it isn't always a good thing, but in 90% of the cases it should be a good thing, because with giving checks and with giving such a threat, there are always a chance to win some material or positional advantage. Here, now you have to defend yourself. If you play something like rook to f4, then queen to g2 is a check. Queen to g4, king to g4, and now there is a bit of a short line where in the end black wins material or even gets white checkmated. So first you give a check here, king goes back, and then bishop to g2, king to h4, g5, opening up the position, very important when the king is in the center of the board. Pawn captures, and then queen to e7. Whatever you play, in the end it will be checkmate. So this is what happens if king goes to h3. So he is pretty much forced to stay on the h4, g4 squares, but then queen to h2, king goes back, you give another check, and now when the h-file is open, you play rook to d1. You threaten rook to h1, and white needs to give up a queen. So this is what happens if rook plays on f4, so this is not the best way how to defend it. The best way, probably the best way, and the way how Topalov played it, was knight to e3, now with the knight defending the g4 square. But keeping on with the same ideas, queen to e8 was played, threatening queen to h5 checkmate. g4 stopping it, and h5 once again challenging the g4 pawn. Now black is threatening to capture here with check, and after that queen to h5 is coming. Once again checkmate is in the air. And once again Topalov plays a very risky move, but the move that actually stops the threat, king to h4. Now when the pawn captures on g4, queen to h5 is actually not possible, because the king is defending the h5 square. But Anand, already probably low on time, very close to the time control, decides to open up the position playing g5. g5 check, pawn captures, queen captures, and now there is a threat of rook to g4, of course, and if knight captures, queen to g4 is checkmate. So white decided to make some couple of threats of his own, playing queen to f1, and we see rook to g4. As I've said, if knight to g4, queen to g4 is checkmate, so you cannot play this. Here, king to h3 is played. You have to keep in mind that rook to f8 is a threat, maybe give a check and pick up the bishop. Also, knight to f5 is coming. So here, you have to think about what is the best move to play. Of course, there is actually a move that could have been played here, and that could have made black's so Anand's life a lot easier. Rook to f7, but to actually calculate this you need some time, and the players haven't reached time control yet. Here rook to f7 gives up an ability to play rook to f7 by white, and then bishop to g2 check. In this position you actually have to give up a queen, because if you give up a knight, then you have a very nice tactic with rook to h4 check, and whichever piece captures on h4, the king or the knight, in the end it will be queen to g4 checkmate. So you have to give up a queen here, rook captures, and once again the knight cannot capture because queen to g4 is checkmate. The game continues, black is in a serious, also now material advantage, and it will be just a matter of time when he wins. So this could have been a very easy win for Anand here, but he played rook to e7, which is also an okay move. Rook to f8 and king to g7. After these moves, both of the players reach time control, and now they have time to actually think about what to play. Knight to f5 check, king to h7, and now once again you don't have time to capture the rook here because of rook to h4 and queen to g4 checkmate. So Topalov decided to play rook to g3, which in the end enters a very forced line, after which black is definitely in a better position. So Anand took it, he played rook to g3. You have to capture with the pawn. Otherwise, if you capture with the knight, then queen to g4 is once again checkmate. So pawn captures, queen to g4, king moves to h2, and rook to e2 check. King moves to g1, rook to g2, forcing white to give up a queen for a rook and a bishop. If you move to h1, then this is checkmate in one, so no need to do that. Here, queen captures on g2, bishop captures, king captures, queen to e2 check, king to h3, and c4. In this position we can see that already black is in a serious advantage, having 3 pawns and a queen against 3 pawns and against a rook and a knight. And yeah, the idea here is for black to create a passed pawn, so capturing, for example, the pawn on b2 would be a very nice thing to do, preferably with check, and then continue to push this pawn to a promotion. Keeping in mind that you don't want to keep your king in the corner, because then maybe white can make some threats with the rook and the knight. Of course, for the moment, white cannot checkmate you with the rook and the knight, and in order to for that to happen, the king needs to come closer. But you need to see that the king cannot come on h4 and g5 because queen to g4 once again is checkmate. So black is in a superior position here, and it's just a matter of time when he wins this game. So they played a couple of more moves, a4 by white, a5 by black. So just picking up space on the queen side, we saw rook to f6 and now king to g8. Knight to h6, king to g7, just trying to move the king out of the edge of the board. Rook to b6, defending the pawn, and now queen to e4. We have king to h2, king to h7, and this is because when you move the king, knight to f5 won't be a check anymore, and we have rook to d6. Now, those were the final moments. The queen attacked the rook, and at this point you see that the rook is attacked. The rook either has to stay on 6th rank to defend the knight, and also the pawn is attacked here, so even if you play rook to b6, queen to d4 is played, and you cannot keep an eye on both. So the knight and the pawn, you have to decide which one will you keep. If you move, the queen will capture on b2, you will have that passed pawn, and it will be a winning endgame. So at this point, white played knight to f7, but now queen captures on b2 with check, king to h3, and after queen to g7, Topalov threw in the towel, he resigned the game, and Viswanathan Anand defended the World Chess Championship title. And just a quick recap of what happens actually here. Here at this point, of course, first you have to defend the knight. If you play knight to h6, then simply queen to h6, sacrificing the queen for both of these pieces, and the pawn is too far away from the king. And if you play the other move is knight to d8, then simply c3, and once again it is very hard for white to actually keep an eye on this pawn and both the rook and the knight. So playing rook to c6, for example, runs into queen to d7, and the knight is falling. This is already too big of an advantage for black, and this is why Topalov resigned the game. So yeah, that is pretty much it. It has been a very sharp and a very complex game. I hope you enjoyed it. This is me finishing up the coverage of the 2010 World Chess Championship match. I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you have any suggestions of some other championship matches you would like me to cover, please do suggest them in the comments down below. Other than that, yeah, I will be going back to the me playing against engines. And of course, I have some other series in the preparation. Hope you will like those as well. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Enjoy.